Good evening, everybody. Monday Morning Quarterback, episode 35. Glad you could join us tonight. As you can see, we have some new technical features, and we want to thank some loyal followers of Monday Morning Quarterback who helped guide me through this streaming process and how we could bring you guys better content. So we certainly appreciate you guys sharing these videos and helping spread the word. As we're getting more followers, it's just motivating me to continue to bring you guys better content. So now that we have the capabilities of streaming here, we're going to be able to bring you a lot more cool stuff, some more technical and behind the scenes videos as we can pre-record. So we're excited to bring you that as we get into the winter months, because the race season is officially over here in the Midwest. This weekend at Kokomo was kind of our last races around what we'll call home here in Indiana. So good weekend for our racers. Freddie Rowland swept the junior sprint portion at the Pete Frazier Memorial. Zeb Wise won the midget portion of the Kokomo Clash, our finale here in the Hoosier State. Harley Holland with the Power Eye Micro win at SIR and also the championship. So really cool for Harley and all the folks at Driven Midwest. Justin Grant with the USAC CRA win at Paris for the Rheinbold team. So they've been hot out there when Justin's made the trek west. So lots of quarter midget winners for us as well. So season's over here. We're digging hard on development, trying to wrap up some really cool projects and new products for you guys for PRI. So we'll be looking forward to sharing that with you here as we get a little bit closer to those things. So tonight's topic is suspension maintenance and the vital importance of it to the overall handling of your race car and the performance of your shocks. So here in a moment we're going to cut to a video that I recorded earlier today, and we're just going to show you some of the wear items inside of a shock and some of the things that can go wrong if you go too long between services. So we'll cut to that video here in just a second, and that's going to detail all that stuff for you. When we're done with the video, we'll come back live and answer all of your questions. So thank you for tuning in, and here is that video. Good evening, everybody. Wanted to show you a couple wear items inside your shock and why it's so important to service your shocks on a regular basis. So a few weeks ago, we showed you some things you can check between races to make sure the shocks are operating. If you maybe don't own a shock dyno, a couple things you can check from extending them and feeling the initial compression. We actually wanted to show you some internals of the shock that were worn severely. So the first thing we come across in this particular shock was an extremely bent shim. So this was in a crash and or a flip, and the car landed on its wheels and just tackled that shim. So that's a real rare case to see one bent that bad. Not necessarily rare to see a bent one. So this is what it should look like, and this is a bent one right here. So the next thing is, this is a shim that's severely oxidated. It's been in a shock with dirty oil for a long time, and we don't want the shim to look like that. The shims don't open evenly. You won't get the same dampening curve if you have really dirty shims like that. They tend to stick together, so the shim should look like this. Okay. Another thing we'll look at when we're taking the shocks apart, and again we blow them all the way apart when we're doing a service, is this is a shock that had a bent shaft at one point. Somebody might have stuffed a shaft in it and wasn't done here where we would look for this, but it's oblonged, okay? And that shock will have a hard time sealing again even if you put new seals in it. So we look for those kind of things. Another wear item is the piston band. Over time that band can wear, especially if it's in a shock with really dirty oil. So we'll give that a good look over, as well as inspecting the piston to make sure there's no excessive wear there. Twin tube guy is a gas bag. Okay, it has nitrogen in it. You can see there. If you're in a crash, we can potentially rupture that, poke a hole in the gas bag. Your shock won't work effectively then. So that's another thing we would look for. Over here, we poured some new shock oil in a bin, and as well as some dirty oil, and we wanted to show you that and why it's important to have a regular maintenance program. So this is brand new shock oil, and this is oil out of a dirty shock we serviced. Some people will wonder, why did the oil get so dirty? Just like a race car engine, it's a piston moving up and down in a cylinder, okay? Over time, that action will break the oil down. The other thing is, most manufacturers are running a very low drag seal to improve performance. We don't want extra stiction in the shocks. We run a low drag seal. If you race on a sandy track or a track that has real fine dirt, we can ingest that dirt into the shock, breaks the oil down. So if you're maintaining everything on a regular basis, this is not issues you would have, and it helps your shocks operate at the optimum performance. So we just wanted to show you guys a couple of those things and why it's so important to have your shocks serviced on a regular basis. All right, we're back. So as you saw in that video, shocks that go long periods of time between rebuilds, the oil gets dirty, oxidizes the shims, we get excessive wear on piston bands, seals, and so it ends up costing you more if you go longer between rebuilds because you wear so much stuff. And not to mention that your shocks aren't going to operate at their optimum performance with that gunky oil and such. And we see the shocks run at a lot higher temperature when that oil gets dirty as well. So wanted to show that to you guys so you can kind of see what's going on inside and why it's important to get stuff serviced on a regular basis. You wouldn't go the whole season without changing the oil in your engine, and you certainly shouldn't in your shocks as well. So let's open it up to questions. Any of you that are tuned in and have questions, I'm here to answer those for you. Scroll down here and see if there's any questions yet. Doesn't look like it. So a couple things we'll go over while we're waiting for a few questions to come in, and we thank you guys for commenting where you're looking from. We find that really cool to see where everybody's watching from. So a couple things real quick. Not too late to share our video from Friday, which talks about us uploading all of these Monday morning quarterback videos to YouTube. So if you share the video, you get an entry, and if you subscribe to our YouTube page, you get an entry. Thursday afternoon, we're going to go live, and we're going to draw 10 names to give away shirts, hats, beanies, hoodies, all sorts of good stuff. So be sure to share that video and join our YouTube page to enter that drawing. So certainly appreciate if you would do that. Rick, changing the oil in the shock, something we should do or send them in? We would certainly recommend you sending them in unless you have experience building shocks or you have a really good shock dyno, because the bleeding process is a very important part of the build, and knowing how to do that and then being able to check to make sure you got everything bled correctly, you need a dyno to see that. So you know, for 50 or 60 bucks labor, depending on the model of shock, it's well worth it if you don't have a $10,000 shock dyno to properly check your shocks. So if you're very experienced with shocks, you've worked on them in the past, and you have a shock dyno, we can certainly get you set up to service your own stuff if that's something you desire to do. We do have a couple customers that do that, but not many. Nate, we recommend 15 to 20 races before you should get your shock serviced. Okay, if you race on a really, really rough track or a real sandy environment, maybe a little bit quicker, but most of the time 15 to 20 races, and we're catching stuff before things start to go south and keeping everything kind of operating at an optimum performance. Mike, same would go for micros. 15 to 20 races is a good window to get things freshened up. So for some people, that's a full season. You know, if you race 25 races in a season, you could probably go the whole year, send them in, and then we can get you freshened up for the next year. Some people, that's a half a season. If you're blessed enough to be able to race 50, 60 times in a year, good for you. That's awesome. Al, turnaround time. So we usually try to do it in 2 to 3 days. Our promise has always been to our customers, if we have the shock on Tuesday and you've notified us that it's a rush, we have it on Tuesday, we'll make sure you have it back by Friday, okay? So that's always been our promise. We don't want customers to have to miss a race on our behalf, so we definitely can turn things fairly quickly as far as that's concerned. This time of year, the winter time, it can drag on a little bit longer if our customers aren't in a hurry. We don't rush things quite as much from a scheduling standpoint here. So in the summertime we tend to work longer hours, come in earlier just to make sure everybody's getting their stuff. Where in the winter time, kind of give our guys a little bit of a break. And so typical lead time in the winter could maybe be a week or so. If you're not in a rush, we won't put in the overtime to make sure it's done. So. Marcus Thomas, Saints got lucky yesterday. I don't know how you figured the Saints got lucky. That kick was only going to tie it, and there was 24 seconds left. And if you watched a week ago, we've got the most prolific passer in the history of the game. So that was plenty of time for him to get us back down into field goal range. Worst case overtime where we would have scored and won. So just ended it early and didn't prolong the pain there for the Ravens fans. Kyle Pruitt, how exactly does the zero number affect shock, compression, or rebound? So the zero number is the force it takes to get it moving in a specific direction. And so you'll see a big zero number on like left rear rebound, where we're running a lot of a tie down in the shock. It's often referred to as clamp force when you're dealing in a big rebound shock. How much force it takes to get it moving in a direction. On a typical linear shock, say like a right rear that's maybe 95 over 95, your zero number is going to be pretty darn close to zero. You know, it might be a pound one way or the other based on friction, seal drag, etc. But Marcus, one day you'll learn. One day you'll learn. Anybody else that's tuned in have questions based on shock maintenance or anything else you have as you're getting down to the end of the year and trying to close out your season? We have a couple really cool programs planned for you coming up. We're going to start pre-recording some of this stuff. We're going to give you a behind-the-scenes look on how larger race teams do things, how some other manufacturers prepare over the off season, and so we're excited to bring you some of that stuff as we get into the winter months and everybody's getting race crazy and dying to go racing again. Al, do we service, I don't think your whole question got in, Al, on as far as what we service. Does anybody run a compression adjustable left rear shock? Ryan asked. A lot of our wing guys run a double adjustable left rear where they can control compression from a short track to a big half mile. Most of our non-wing guys do not. We did have some guys in years past who would keep two different compression left rears based on track condition, but not super common, but pretty common for the wing guys for sure. Trent, we still like that 15 to 20 race program for quarter midget shocks. Asphalt shocks, you can go a little bit longer because we're not dealing with the elements of dirt and such as much. However, that being said, our through shaft shock definitely needs maintenance every 15 to 20 races. So we got twice as many seals in that shock, some internal pressure, the way that design is. So definitely through shaft should be no more than 20 races, maybe as short as 15 for those guys. If you're running a standard quarter midget shock on pavement, you could probably go 25 races. Dirt, we would still recommend that 15 to 20 window. Al Wismiller, if you want to re-ask your question, I don't think I got the whole thing there. So Ryan, Kyle Pruitt is telling you that he runs a double adjustable or a compression adjustable left rear. I shouldn't say it's double, but he did say it was a compression adjustable. So leaking is an obvious sign. Sometimes it's really hard to tell that it needs service just because, without dynoing it, just because the oil's dirty and shims are starting to get oxidation and grime on them, and they're sticking and not opening in the same fashion. And just checking it by hand, you can't really tell that. If you have a really nice shock dyno, like a Rohrig or a CTW, a Maxwell, you can identify those things. Anybody else have any questions? No more questions? Al, do we service brands other than CSI? So in addition to our own brand of shocks, we service Penske shocks, Pro shocks, and AFCO shocks. That's kind of all we do at this stage. We previously did a few other brands, but as our business has grown, it's just became increasingly difficult to keep inventory for anything more than that. So, yep. All right. If nobody has any other questions, we will tune off for tonight. We certainly appreciate you tuning in. If I didn't get to your question, ask it here and I will try to answer, or shoot me a private message here on Facebook. My name is Garrett Andrews, or you can shoot me an email at garrett@csishocks.com. I think we got one more question. Dave Sharpley, thanks for watching Dave, our friend from Sharp Advantage. If you didn't see last week's episode of Dave pouring a seat for Colin Mitchell, definitely something I would check out. But thank you guys for tuning in tonight. We certainly appreciate it. Hope you have a fantastic week, and look for that live drawing Thursday afternoon. So share Friday's video and subscribe to our YouTube page. Thanks, guys.